It was easy to say what was right and wrong when the war was already over. It was easy decades later, in air-conditioned classrooms and quiet living rooms, to point at black and white photos and declare who were heroes and who were traitors. But in 1944, when Manila smelled like smoke and hunger had a sound of its own, morality was not a straight line. It was a trembling hand reaching for whatever could keep a family alive one more day. On the morning it began, the man woke up already knowing he would betray someone. His name was Mateo de la Cruz. He was 32 years old, a former clerk who once wore clean shirts and copied numbers into ledgers before the war turned paper into a luxury and pencils into weapons. That morning, his wife did not ask where he was going. She only handed him a piece of boiled camote and pressed it into his palm like a secret. "Come back," she said. Not safely, not proudly, just come back. Outside, the city was quiet in the unnatural way only occupied cities could be. The Japanese patrols had passed earlier, boots echoing on cracked pavement. Somewhere far away, a gunshot rang once, then nothing. Mateo pulled the woven sack over his face, the coarse fibers scratching his skin. Through two rough holes, the world looked smaller, blurred, and easier to survive in. He joined a line of men waiting near the garrison. Some were old, some barely grown. All were Filipino. All avoided each other's eyes. They were Makapili now. The Makabayan Katipunan and G. Filipino. The Japanese called them. Patriots, the posters said, allies of a greater East Asia, protectors of order. The truth was messier. Some men were there because the Japanese threatened their families. Others because they were starving. A few because they believed the promises whispered to them that when the war ended, land would be redistributed, power would shift, and those who helped would be rewarded. Mateo told himself he was there for food. It was not entirely a lie. His youngest son had stopped crying from hunger weeks ago, which was somehow worse. The Japanese officer had been clear. 1 sack of rice per week. Protection. A job. All Mateo had to do was point. "Do not speak," the officer had said in broken Tagalog. Just point. That was how it worked. Makapili did not arrest. They did not interrogate. They did not pull the trigger. They only identified. They walked with Japanese soldiers through neighborhoods, markets, alleys. They watched faces. They listened for whispers. And when the officer nodded, they raised a finger. The finger was enough. That first day, Mateo recognized a man from his old office. The man froze when he saw the sack-covered faces, his eyes darting like a trapped animal's. Mateo felt his heart slam against his ribs. He did not raise his hand. He told himself he didn't see him. Another Makapili did. The Japanese soldiers moved quickly. The man was dragged away, shouting something Mateo could not hear over the blood pounding in his ears. The sack over Mateo's face suddenly felt heavier, like it was pressing inward. That night, Mateo vomited behind their house until there was nothing left. His wife said nothing. She cooked rice for the first time in months. Their children ate slowly, reverently, as if afraid the food might disappear if they moved too fast. Mateo watched them and told himself it was worth it. He told himself that survival was not betrayal. He told himself that if he did not point, someone else would. Days passed, then weeks. The Makapili became feared. Civilians learned to recognize the woven sacks, the way masked men moved with unnatural confidence. Mothers pulled children indoors. Neighbors stopped greeting one another. Silence became armor. Mateo learned things he never wanted to know. He learned who slipped out at night, who passed notes, who had a brother in the mountains with the guerrillas. Knowledge became a curse. He tried to avoid seeing too much, hearing too much. But the Japanese officers were observant. They noticed hesitation. One afternoon, an officer stopped him mid-patrol. The man smiled thinly and tapped Mateo's chest with the butt of his rifle. "You know," he said, "you are local. You know everyone." Mateo nodded. "So why you never point?" That night, Mateo pointed. The man he pointed at was named Andres. He lived 2 houses away. He had shared cigarettes with Mateo before the war, talked about baseball and radio dramas. Andres had also been careless. He had whispered too loudly one night, laughing about how the Japanese would never catch the guerrillas hiding near the river. Mateo raised his finger. Andres looked at him. Even through the sack, Mateo felt it. Recognition passed between them like an electric shock. Andres did not shout. He only stared, his face going slack with understanding. The Japanese took him. Mateo did not sleep for 3 days. History books would later say that many Makapili joined out of fear or hunger, that some believed they were protecting their families. The others were opportunists. All of that was true. None of it captured the slow erosion of the soul, the way each small choice made the next one easier and the last one impossible to undo. As the war dragged on, Manila became a wounded animal. Bombings intensified. Fires spread faster than rumors. Bodies appeared in the streets, sometimes Japanese, sometimes Filipino, often unrecognizable. The Makapili were no longer just guides. Some were armed now. Some grew cruel, drunk on the small power of being feared. Mateo avoided them. He stayed quiet. He pointed when he had to. He brought home rice and told himself stories he no longer believed. Then the Americans came back. It did not happen all at once. It came with distant thunder, then closer explosions, then skies filled with planes. The Japanese tightened their grip and the city screamed. During the Battle of Manila, buildings collapsed like sandcastles. Civilians died by the thousands. The Makapili became targets overnight. Guerrillas hunted them. Civilians whispered names. Old grudges resurfaced with guns. One evening, a boy knocked on Mateo's door. The boy was shaking, his face streaked with dirt and tears. "They are coming," he whispered. "The guerrillas. They know." Mateo understood immediately. He had known this day would come, just not how fast. He looked at his wife. She looked back, eyes steady in a way that terrified him more than panic. "Go," she said. "Hide." "And you?" "I will say nothing," she said. Whatever happens, Mateo ran. He did not know where he was going. Streets were blocked, burning, flooded with rubble and bodies. He tore the sack from his face and threw it into the river like a confession. He hid in the ruins of a church, the smell of incense long replaced by dust and death. That night he heard gunshots nearby, screams, shouting in Tagalog, names being called. He wondered if Andre's family was among them. When dawn came, Manila was quieter in the exhausted way of places that had lost too much to keep screaming. Mateo emerged slowly. A group of men stood near the plaza. Some were armed. Some wore ragged civilian clothes. None wore sacks. They saw him. Someone recognized him. "Makapili," a voice said. The word fell heavier than any bullet. It carried months of fear, anger, grief, and betrayal. Mateo opened his mouth, but no words came. There was nothing he could say that would untangle what he had done from why he had done it. A man stepped forward, older, scarred. His eyes were tired. "Why?" the man asked. Mateo thought of rice, of his children chewing slowly, of Andre's eyes, of the sack scratching his face. "I was afraid," he said. The man studied him for a long moment. Around them, others murmured, shifting their grips on weapons. "Everyone was afraid," the man said quietly. Mateo nodded. That was the worst part. He had no special excuse. Fear was not unique. Hunger was not rare. He had simply made a choice others had refused to make. History records that many Makapili were killed after the war. Some were executed, some disappeared. Some escaped justice and lived quietly, carrying their past like an unhealed wound. Mateo's story did not end with a dramatic execution or a heroic redemption. The man waved him away. "Go," he said. "Live with it." That, Mateo would later realize, was the harsher sentence. Years passed. The Philippines rebuilt. Independence came. Streets were renamed. New children were born who did not remember the war except through stories. Mateo grew old in a different town under a different name. He worked small jobs, kept his head down, avoided conversations about the occupation. Sometimes someone would use the word Makapili in anger as an insult. The word had outlived the group. It had become shorthand for betrayal, for choosing self over country, survival over solidarity. Each time Mateo flinched. He never told his children what he had done. He taught them to love the country, to honor those who resisted, to value courage. Perhaps it was his way of paying a debt he could never fully repay. The story of the Makapili is not simple, and it is not comfortable. It forces us to ask questions we would rather avoid. What does courage look like when your child is starving? What does betrayal mean when survival is on the line? How thin is the line between victim and accomplice? History remembers actions, not intentions. That is why the word Makapili still stings. It is not just about what people did, but about the reminder that in extreme times, ordinary people can be pushed into extraordinary moral failures. Mateo's story was one of many. Some Makapili were cruel. Some were opportunists. Some, like him, were ordinary men crushed between impossible choices. The war did not excuse them, but it did explain how they came to be. And that is the real lesson buried beneath the shame and anger. Not all battles are fought with guns. Some are fought inside the human heart, where fear, hunger, love, and survival collide. If you were alive then, standing in a burning city with a family to feed and a sack waiting to cover your face, what choice would you have made? History has already answered for them. It still waits for us.